Well, looks like we're about to be exploring around in the mines after all. See, Fernando, that has to be expected at this point, so... Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Sonic the Hedgehog here. And I'm Pinkie Pie here. We are from the likes of the Maxi Toys videos, of course. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of, well, Super Mario Party for the Nintendo Switch. Specifically on the Mario Party mode. See, Fernando... yeah, so it's been about a week since we actually did manage to come back to this. Specifically, the last weekend, actually, because, previously, on our Let's Play of Super Mario Party, on the Mario Party mode, is the fact that we actually did manage to show off, or in this case, we did manage to play through the first board in the entire game, which is, of course, you know, Womb's Domino Ruins. And today, for this episode, especially noticeable in the entire weekend, that we are about to be able to play through the second board in the Mario Party mode in Super Mario Party, and that is of course King Bob-omb's Powderkeg mine, which is actually a very long name for the actual board like this, even then. Although, to be expected at this point, Pinkie Pie, that will mention more details onto that when we're able to get started with this board. See, Fernando, as you can see, the actual opponents on this board this time around, though, we are about to be selecting Bowser Jr. for this board, because, well, originally that, although we're gonna explain more on that until whenever we get to the fourth and the final board, in the Mario Party mode, that is. But even now, from now on, though, let's just go ahead and just get things started with, of course, King Bob-omb's Powderkeg, or in this case, Powderkeg mine. See, even then, I do apologize by the forms of my dialogue itself has gone pretty rushed at the moment, but because of that, though, there's no much else I can really talk about this at this point, other than, well, once again, that just like in the forms of how it does it in Mario Party 9, it's basically a Bob-omb themed board. Although, except the fact that it does add classic elements to the mix, like for instance, you know, the space by space syndrome, and especially noticeable about the fact that, you know, you get the idea for that point. So, yeah, today was actually forms of the 6th, or in this case, not the 6th, the 9th of March today. See, Fernando, that recently, yesterday, as far as what Sonic already mentioned about this and during the likes of in yesterday's Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed video, on his Grand Prix videos, I should say, that recently about the fact that we've actually got ourselves Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn for the Nintendo 3DS, and we'll give, we'll mention about the forms of our first thoughts of the forms of Extra Epic Yarn for the Kirby game, and because of that, though, you know, you get the probably get suggestions at that point. So, anyways, though, let's get this thing to it with the first mini game in this board in particular, and this in 2 vs 2. And we'll go for Fruit Forecast. Alright, so catching the falling fruits, the players below can catch the fruits that the players above missed. So, basically move around with the analog stick side by side, and that's all you have to really do. This minigame kind of reminds me of that particular minigame from, I would say from Mario Party 5, but in forms of Berry Basket minigame. Although, except the fact that we have to deal with a, let's just say, a directional, or in this case, by the forms of the diagonal partner movement right there, because as you can see, that between the red team and the blue team is the fact that, well, we have to rely on the forms of, like, you know, still catching those fruits and stuff like that. But here's the thing, though, is the fact that if you think that one of the colored teams was actually on each side, but it turns out it was actually a diagonal movement, or in this case a diagonal formation, so just in case if, you know, you get the idea for that point. So, anyways though, so once you go for all these fruits that we've actually still claims into, then we, pretty sure enough, we dominated everything on that minigame, so... And I think that's been shown off by the forms of in last year's preview of the game, by the forms of in 2018, specifically in August time. And I believe this is one of the minigames they've shown us that on, you know, in the actual game preview before that game comes out. So, yeah, back in the day that was. So anyways though, let's talk about the actual main gimmick of this board before we talk about the forms of our first thoughts. of whenever I get my first impressions of Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn. That I don't think I actually mentioned about that in yesterday's video, as what Pinkie Pie already mentioned about that before. Basically, the actual main gimmick of this board is that, as you can see, on the center of the board, you still have yourselves your King Bob-omb with you. Well, at least to be more specifically, you have King Bob-omb in the actual main board. But here's the thing though, is the fact that this particular concept of the actual center of the board type of gimmick, it looks incredibly similar to both Mario Party 2 Spaceland with that death laser, and especially noticeable with Waluigi's Island Dynamite section in Waluigi's Island in Mario Party 3. Although, there are some slight differences here and there, which even then we'll mention more on that until whenever we continue exploring for this particular board. So, yeah, and as you can see from the computer player standpoint, as you can see on this footage, the computer players we're about to be compete against is well, Monty Mole, in this case another newcomer in evolves of the actual playable characters on the Mario Party syndrome, and especially noticeable with Diddy Kong from Mario Party Star Rush, well, since Mario Party Star Rush, and Rosalina from basically any most recent Mario Party games, basically. Alright, can take pancake. Grab the pancakes. You can only grab pancake if it's completely uncovered. The pancakes with a star mark are worth 3 points. So basically move around with the analog stick, of course, and press the button on the right to able to actually grab it. It doesn't matter if you're able to actually press it again if you drop it on your pancake plate, so it does it for you. So anyways, let's grab some of these pancakes. In fact, recently we've managed to have ourselves the pancakes buddy forms of about 4 days ago now, because as I said this before, that today was the 9th of March, and even then I'm expecting that the other parts will be uploaded in during the likes of in tomorrow, which is of course the 10th of March at that time. So because of that, you know, we're mainly focusing on the weekends departments, especially by the forms of Mario Party videos and stuff. So yeah, that's about it, obviously. And somehow we got very unlucky right there, because we seemed to lost by, I would say, 2 points by Rosalina. So yeah, that's a little bit far from potential there. So anyways though, let's talk about the forms of another thing that's been happening with the forms of this space, or this case in this particular board. As you can see, that every time you land on that happening space, or in this case that event spaces, as what most people call it, what happens is the fact that if you keep on landing on that event space, on that specific center spot where King Bob-omb was, basically that if you land on that, as you can see, the actual counter will actually just count down to 1. Which, you know, is kind of like the same thing for how it does it in Mario Party 3 on Waluigi's Island. If you manage to land on that happening space, one of your counter, or in this case the actual timer, will able to count down to 1. So even then though, like, you know, it starts at 5 normally, but once you're continuously landing onto that event space, it actually decides to able to go and change it into 4 and 3 and vice versa every time. So at least to be more specifically, when every time you land on that event space. So you know, it's kind of like the same thing for the Dynamite section in Waluigi's Island, as what Pinkie Pie mentioned about it before, you know, since in Mario Party 3. However though, unlike in Mario Party 2 counterparts in Spaceland, that normally back in Spaceland in Mario Party 2, that if you get to that center part of the death laser, if you every time you actually walk past the directional arrow directions on that specific board in Mario Party 2, and every time you actually go either up, down, left, or right, the actual counter will able to decrease from well, by 1. So even then though, that you start with 5 as usual, and goes down from 4 to 3 and vice versa every time that happens. So yeah, it feels completely you know, kind of similar to that, but it feels more accurately exactly the same thing for how it does in Mario Party 3, specifically in Waluigi's Island. Although, except this time around though, it's actually King Bob-omb instead of the Dynamites. So because even though it makes it incredibly similar. So But anyways though, so we have another minigame to play around with, and once again it's 4-player minigame. Seriously, we're going to be playing a lot of these 4-player minigames, kind of think about it. And of course we have Slapperzori, which again I do apologize by the forms of that pronunciation error. And I think we've already played this before, so even then though, to be expected. So even then though, let's go ahead and take some of the snapshots for this camera right there. Even though that's obviously we need to aim for higher points compared to everyone else though, really. So that's as far as memories goes, although there's actually another happening space that's been going on with this board in particular, is the fact that you see that in a couple of seconds ago, that Rosalina did actually land on that specific happening space, or the event space I should say, that it actually caused you to able to go to a different section of a minecart tunnel. So you can then know that if you ever land on that minecart, or that if you get into the actual minecart, it depends on what section you're in. It could be either bottom left of the board, or what the hell is up with this eyes for Monty Mole? It's like every time you actually hit him, his eyes just actually pops up. So there, yeah, that's actually kind of freaky looking. Although it's pretty funny at the same time. So yeah, at least we still won that. So anyway, another happening space that's been pointing out at, you know, I already mentioned about it before, that you know, that minecart stuff. Or in this case, that minecart section. Well, depends on what space you land on. It could be either the bottom left corner of the board, or in the top right corner of the board. It actually takes you from between these two parts right there of the minecart. So even then though. However though, unlike in certain parts throughout the boards from the past, that you do have an option to able to select yes or no. Like for example, in Undersea Dream in Mario Party 5, let's go ahead and use the poison mushroom on Monty Mole, because I'm pretty sure he's gonna catch up to the star space at this point. So yeah, anyway, yeah, unlike in Mario Party 5 Undersea Dream, that if you go to the next section or another, like to the left side of the board, to the right side of the board, it all depends on what section you're in, you do have an option to able to select yes or no, because it all depends on the dice, no. The star space is actually located in that particular board. However though, that's not the case here, because you always have to be forced to able to actually ride on the minecarts. So yeah, that could be pretty trippy, I have to say that much. So yeah, so that could get a lot more potentials there, especially because if you really want to get that star space or that star so badly, well, too bad, you have to force to able to actually get onto that specific event, rather than just selecting yes or no for that entirely optional selection. So yeah, because of that though, you really have to deal with it. So, and it looks like Rosalina, she is using her golden dash mushroom, and looks like her coins is gonna be taken. Yeah, to be expected at this point. So yeah, another happening space they did able to actually just decide to come across is that if you couldn't tell that in the previous turn, that Monty Mole did actually land on that happening space right next to the forms of the conveyor belt section. And what happens is the fact that if you land on it, it actually changes the actual conveyor belt's direction. So even then though, that can able to lead you to a good part, whilst other times though, bad section. So even then though, that I believe Monty Mole got screwed over right from the start. And I believe whenever we get to that conveyor belt section, I'm pretty sure we're gonna get screwed. See, Fernando, because of that though, we'll mention more on that until after we're done with Block and Load minigame first, which I'm pretty sure we've already played this before. See, Fernando though, there's not much else I can talk through, so yeah, let's just get into the forms of the actual first impressions of when we actually did play the, I would consider to be the final 3DS game we'll be having at this point now, just because, you know, we're now moving on to the Nintendo Switch at this point. But the forms of Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn, one of my first impressions of the game, is actually pretty alright and stuff. Even though it wasn't the best version of the game, I will say that much, because I still kind of prefer the Wii version, just because of, you know, how unique it was, even though some people seem to really not enjoying Epic Yarn as much compared to the previous Kirby games. But I will admit though, I still really enjoyed Kirby's Epic Yarn. In fact, Piglet did already done that Let's Play before, back in 2018 so far. So naturally, although we could appreciate it if we're able to do that Let's Play again, but on the 3DS hardware. And let's just say we're probably not gonna do that, just because it's the exact same game as the Wii version, but added more content here and there. Stuff like, the Devilish mode and stuff like that. If I've played the Devilish mode so far, I will admit though, that mode is actually really harder than it looks. Because obviously, what makes it the 3DS version gives it some credit for is the fact that they did add some challenge variety. But honestly, after when I've played it for a while on Devilish mode, specifically for the majority of the whole game, actually I'll get to more on that later. But for now, we got ourselves the Bob-omb right there. I wonder what that's going to be able to affect on. Pretty sure that's Bob-omb. I'm sure I'm annoying. So, yeah, looks like we've actually got ourselves our temporary ally right there, which, if you remember from Mario Party Star Rush, specifically in Toad Scramble mode, in that 2 levels specifically, which there are Worlds 2-2 and Worlds 2-3, that in those 2 stages in Mario Party Star Rush Toad Scramble mode, that if you stumble across the actual, a temporary ally, which is of course PP, but he forms of the actual ghost. Basically what happens is the fact that most like any forms of PP from Mario Party Star Rush, that you have to able to actually carry him along, as long as the actual the movements were able to affect you as often. Because even then, do you remember in Star Rush in PP, if you manage able to carry, or in this case tag along with him at all times, basically he does have occasional zeros, while some other times though, gives you negative numbers, which that could be somewhat equivalent to the Bob-ombs in this board in particular, because it has the exact same thing for how it does it in PP from Mario Party Star Rush, because you still have rely on the forms of that 0 and -1 number on that specific dice block. So even then though, that again it all depends on luck though really, because either way you can have to cope with this stuff. And unlike any forms of in Mario Party Star Rush counterpart, that normally that you can't able to actually get rid of any kind of temporary allies, which is essentially either PPs and everything, that you can at least get rid of it very, very quickly. But however though, in this particular game, it might take a really, really long time to able to get rid of the Bob-omb, because it might actually function the same way for how it does it from the PP from, from Star Rush, obviously. But the biggest difference is here is the fact that obviously we have to specifically wait until, I believe you have to wait until whenever it gets to, I would say 3 turns specifically, which I may be wrong, because I know for the fact that it's been a really long time since I actually played Mario Party Star Rush up to this point, because, you get the idea, because we're obviously moving on to the next generation of consoles at this rate, specifically for Nintendo's part, which is of course Nintendo Switch, of course. So anyway, and I guess that's about it when it comes to the forms of the explanations worth mentioning, especially by the forms of why is Diddy Kong going that way? I'm guessing because of how the fact that, well, it's still in hard mode, but it could appreciate it if we can able to participate for a challenge for able to actually go through very hard or master mode, even though I don't think we've actually unlocked that difficulty yet for master mode. Yeah, I could have thinking of the same thing for that. So, timing is money, another coin-based minigame. So let's see what we got here. Snag the most coins. Don't trigger a Bob-omb or you lose all of your coins. So, yeah, obviously press the right button on the Joy-Con until you're able to jump, and press it again while jumping to perform a ground pound. So, this minigame to me can be very difficult because you have to rely on that specific ground pound. So, but at the moment right now, we're actually doing not that bad actually, Stephen and I. Well, obviously the highest amount of coins you can get is of course 5 coins. So, yeah, let's just see how this will go. So, it looks like we're not doing too bad, and oh God! We got screwed over right there. Yep, by that specific timing right there. That's the problem I have with most of these anti-cube Mario Party titles sometimes, specifically in some minigames, that I always found out some of the timing aspects can get a little bit more strict at times. Well, this is because of how the fact that you have to be right on with it. Well, I think it's probably just because of my mistake right there. Yeah, I'm guessing it might be your mistake the whole entire time. Yeah, I would have thought so anyway. So, as far as this board goes, it feels, you know, kind of like how it does it, but in forms of like Mario Party 9 Bob-omb Factory, that the one time they have to like, you know, deal with the conveyor belts and everything, which is kind of like the same thing. Although, to be expected that, although this sport usually takes place in a Bob-omb facilities or something like that, however though, it sort of feels like a combination of both the Bob-omb junkyard or something like that, and especially noticeable with lava environments, which either way, I'm pretty sure in Mario Party, oh yeah, and also in new forms it takes place in the mines, so, but even then, I will admit though right away though, this board is miles better than new forms of Bob-omb Factory from Mario Party 9, because, well, the problem I have with Mario Party 9 with Bob-omb Factory as far as the actual board itself, because of that, how the fact that you will get screwed over no matter what in Bob-omb Factory, at least at the very end of that particular board. But at least even then, because of how the fact that you have to rely on the car mechanic, which either way though, that again, it does not apply to this game this time around though, which is a good thing, because thank God, I don't have to deal with a lot of frustration here and there. Well, at least as far as that's been consumption with, so. Anyway, so let's get into the actual first thoughts of our run-through of Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn on our own time. That, even though the graphics wasn't nearly as great as compared to the forms of the superior Wii version, because obviously with how the 3DS's quality these days, they're going to tone down a bit. See, Nintendo, because as a result from that, well, it just makes it a little bit more rough around the edges at points. Well, at least it makes it a little bit darker compared to the forms of lighting effects, but in forms of the Wii version of the game, so even then, expecting some of these graphical differences here and there, although it still runs the exact same frame rate as before, although I've noticed something on the actual cutscenes on the 3DS version of Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn, actually runs a little bit more differently than the forms of the 60 frames per second on the Wii version, because it doesn't seem to jaggy most of the time on the Wii version, because I have no issues there. Oh god, we got ourselves the upcoming event, which this what happens if you manage to let the actual counter reaches to 0, and this happens. Basically, what happens is the fact that obviously everyone gathers around, as you can see there, and obviously the King Bob-omb will go acting like crazy, and all of a sudden everyone's got exploded, and rather than losing all of your coins, unlike the dynamites in Mario Party 3 and Waluigi's Island, instead you actually take away half of your coins, so even then though, I guess it makes it purely obvious because of how the fact that it makes it incredibly unfair if you lose all of your coins. So, Maps of Glory. This one's interesting. Defeat your rivals with superior numbers. Possible slots results 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Aim for the 6. So even then though, that this minigame is so similar to the forms of that one minigame, or in this case a luck-based minigame based off from Mario Party 5, which you know the minigame I'm usually going to talk about, which is of course Mathletes, because even then, in Mathletes, that you have to rely on the actual dice rolls and all that stuff, or the actual slots I should say. However though, unlike in Mathletes, I found that the actual timing aspect of this minigame is actually a little bit more easier this time around. Because rather than becoming luck-based than ever before, so instead you have to rely on the timing aspect. See, Nintendo was to deal with the forms of timing aspects, we already mentioned about that before. Yeah, I would have thought so anyway, so. But anyways though, and also another differences here compared to the Mathletes from Mario Party 5 is the fact that it's obviously 2 versus 2 minigame as opposed to 1 versus 3. So, makes it obvious, so even though you get the idea, so. But obviously, that I really do like the actual aesthetics about this level, or in this case for that minigame right there, because it's filled with jigsaw puzzle pieces. Because even though it's almost like a tribute to the forms of Banjo-Kazooie almost, even though that the whole entire environment is still pretty much exactly the new Super Mario Bros. U aesthetics almost. Well, at least even then though, because that's what most people seem to complain about most of the time with the forms of some of these aesthetics about this game, is that obviously, they heavily borrowed so many visual styles from New Super Mario Bros. Series. Well, to be more specifically, the new Super Mario Bros. Series to be exact. So, that's what some people complain about it. So even then, though, yeah, you get the idea for that point. Alright, so we're still in first place so far. So, because obviously, as you can tell, that we're still about to be using Bowser Jr. in this particular board. So, and just like before with the forms of most of these Mario Party Let's Plays, we'll be able to actually just, save up some other characters for the next few boards and almost. Although, again, that this game doesn't have that much boards to begin with, like EV forms of like just only 4 boards, which I kind of wish there was more to it. Which even then though, because of the fact that I'm guessing they have running out of ideas or something like that. Although let me know in the comments below. But even then though, let's just find out until whenever we hopefully if DLC will become a thing. Even though that it's pretty strange whenever we were able to actually predict on those for the most part though. But even then though, that might be a little bit more consumption, or in this case redundancy and stuff. So, and it looks like Rosalina got her first star. So even then though that, well, usually we've already steal the first star already due to Monty Mole gets to that first. So naturally that's how we can go for. So anyways though, yeah, I do apologize if my throat is actually getting a little bit more clogged up here and there, but even then though, that's just how I think it is, so... Alright, so it looks like Rosalina is now in 2nd place now, and looks like Monty Mole is now in 4th place, and Diddy Kong, he was in 3rd place. In fact, funny thing actually, is the fact that, since then, that, as to be expected, the fact that the player's selection on this board, as you can see there, we actually have, like, Rosalina, and Diddy Kong, and Monty Mole, and Bowser Jr. on that particular board, which means we have 50% for each between the Mario Hero good guys and 50% of the time bad guys, buddy forms of Bowser's minions. So, very interesting dynamic, but when we get to the next board, which is of course Mega Fruit Paradise, which even then we'll mention more details onto that on the next weekend. So, hopefully expect it able to show that off eventually. So, yeah, and because of that though, I think we should probably go for like the majority of the Bowser's minions on the next board. Well, to be more specifically, for that specific, well, we'll mention more details onto that until, again, next weekend, so... But anyway though, wow, looks like we're actually on to the next minigame, and seems more accurately though, we're almost there to the halfway point of this board so far. So, anyways though, let's see. Grid Room, Gauntlets. I think we've already played this before. See Fernando this time around though with, you know, different playable characters. Something's worth mentioning though also is the fact that, you notice right from the start though, with the forms of like starting for our, the entire Let's Play, or in this case starting our Let's Play of this game, that if you couldn't tell already, although we will explain more on that after we're able to conclude the Mario Party mode either way. So even then though, yeah, that's as far as we can go for it. So obviously, just like the ones that how it does in the previous boards, we still managed to set this up to 20 turns, because I feel like 20 turns is a little bit more of a perfect length compared to the forms of the shorter amount of time for you know, 10 turns and even 15 turns as a result. So yeah, that's why we've decided to go for like 20 turns for the majority of this Let's Play, just because, well, it makes it incredibly fun, which even then though, that I still wish if this game will actually features a 50-turn system, just like the ones and how it does it in, you know, Mario Party, the top 100 in a minigame match. At least they got that at least. So, but for whatever reason, they decided to able to decrease the amount of turns they might actually go for. But anyways though, I believe that Bob-omb is now gone, so even then though, we don't have to worry about that now. So, that's pretty good all in all. So, again, when it comes to this board in general itself, it's actually pretty good. Even though I kind of wish there's more variety on them. Like, as you can tell, that this board is remarkably smaller compared to the forms of the previous board we've actually already shown off. By the forms of, you know, Womph's Domino Ruins because of the actual jungle environment and stuff. But I just wish that the boards themselves could go a little bit more slightly bigger, because unlike in the previous Mario Party titles, at least they did manage to scale those boards no problem. Like, for instance, by the forms of what's the biggest boards in the entirety of the Mario Party series so far? Basically, pretty much in every single aspect of the Hudson Soft Mario Party games, because they did have, you know, a best aesthetics, and especially noticeable with the forms of like more spaces than ever will be. Well, I wasn't really sure about that though, but even then, no, let's just concentrate so far anyway. And it looks like the next star space is gonna be right over there. I'm pretty sure we need to get to that at form or another, and it looks like, so far anyway, that specifically in the beginning portion of this board so far, it seems more accurately though, we don't have a single ally yet. Or in this case, an ally yet. Sorry, I just got a little bit of a tongue twisting in the end, because either way, yeah. So, anyways, Rosalina gets a 3. So in this case, she'll land on the blue space with no doubt. So, yeah, that's as far as we can explain about the forms of, you know, King Bob-omb's Powderkeg mine. So, but again, it's a pretty long name of a board. Because either way, though, it's to be expected at this point. But even then, let's just move on to the next minigame. So, but let's see what we have this time. 1 versus 3 minigames. So, do we get something new, or is it pretty much the same? Off the chain. So it's pretty much the same minigame as we've already played for last time. But, except this time around though, we have to get away from the chain jump this time. So, let's go ahead and deal with it. So, yeah, that's as far as we can go for this point, and as far as the actual, like, the board itself, and especially noticeable with, we'll get to the actual more details about the forms of our first impressions of Kirby's Extra Epic Yarn, although we've already mentioned about this, quite a few times already, but, let's just mention about that again, just for the sake of things. For what we've played it, as far as controls, schemes, as far as I'm concerned with that version of the game, it does take a while to get used to, because I'm more accustomed to the forms of the actual Wii Remote. And even though the only thing I'm most likely concerned of is that when we get to the train transformation sequence, I'm pretty sure that it might actually utilize the touchscreen or something. Although the bottom screen is kind of worthless though in the Extra Epic Yarn, because all it does in the bottom screen, it just shows us where the treasure or how much treasures that you've got. Especially noticeable with in the devilish mode, it shows you about the forms of the actual health gauge. So yeah, that's as far as we can say about this. So. Oh wow, we're actually on turn number 9 already? Jeez, I can't believe the game or the board itself is going way too fast, kind of thinking about it though. Yeah,